Title at Syl's wedding, my nametag read Maid, Mill sneered. You're merely a servant here. Worse, I got no food. Syl chuckled, meals are for true kin. I stood, slipped off my wedding band, and declared, then I'm done here. Mill's face blanched. Hold on, Chapter 1. The wedding feast, the venue shimmered in gold and cream, chandeliers sparkled, violins hummed gently, and laughter filled the space. I lingered near the entrance, clutching my daughter's tiny hand, trying to convince myself I fit in. It was my sister-in-law's wedding, a family affair, or so it seemed. But the moment I stepped inside, I caught the sidelong glances, the hushed murmurs. Then came the name tag, Maid. The word was stark, printed in bold black, pinned to my chest by an usher who wouldn't meet my gaze. I stood frozen as laughter echoed nearby. My mother-in-law noticed at once. She leaned back, her pearl necklace glinting, and smirked. You're just a servant here, she said, loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. Don't act shocked. The words stung, but I balled my fists, holding my composure. Soon my stomach rumbled, but no plate arrived. Servers passed me by, smirking as they served everyone else. My sister-in-law caught my eye, giggling as she raised her glass. Meals are for true kin, she said, her voice laced with venom. The guests erupted in laughter. My wife stayed silent, averting her eyes, embarrassed perhaps, but not enough to stand up for me. Something inside me broke. I rose slowly, my chair scraping the marble floor. The laughter faded. All eyes turned to me. I slid the ring off my finger, setting it deliberately on the table. Then I'm done here, I said, my voice calm. The room fell quiet. My mother-in-law's smug grin vanished, her face paling as she whispered, trembling, hold on. Chapter 2. The hush that revealed the ballroom was eerily silent, the kind that makes your ears buzz. I could hear the faint hum of the cooling system, the clink of a fork against a plate, and the shallow breaths of guests stifling their whispers. I turned to leave, sliding the ring across the polished table. But that single word, hold on, lingered like fog. I paused, glancing back at my mother-in-law. Her smugness was gone. Her face was ashen, her eyes flicking toward the head table where my father-in-law sat rigid, clutching his wine glass so tightly I thought it might break. Why? I asked coolly. Why stay? So you can keep mocking me? So I can play servant while you feast like kings? Her lips parted, but no words came. Her hands shook on the arms of her ornate chair. My sister-in-law smirked, misreading her mother's hesitation. Ignore him. He's always been pathetic. But her voice faltered as she noticed her mother's stare. Then it hit me. Her panic wasn't about my departure. It was about what would happen if I left, because I knew something they thought I'd buried forever. I picked up the ring not to wear it, but to hold it between my fingers like a token. You think this is about me walking away? No, this is about what I'll reveal once I'm gone. Gasps rippled through the room. My wife shifted, her forced smile cracking. My father-in-law's knuckles whitened. My mother-in-law pressed her lips tight and whispered, almost pleading, please take your seat. Chapter 3. The fractures show I didn't sit. Instead, I leaned on the table, the ring gleaming between my fingers, and let my gaze sweep the family like a searchlight. Curious, I said softly. The moment I choose to leave, you all look terrified, as if you fear what I might say once I'm beyond your control. Whispers erupted across the hall. Guests leaned closer, curiosity trumping decorum. My wife twisted her napkin, hissing, stop causing a scene. But her mother's voice betrayed desperation. Please don't, I smiled, slow and deliberate. I wonder what these fine folks would think, I said, raising my voice just enough for nearby tables to hear, if they knew how this family treats those it labels servants. Or maybe if they learned what happened to last year's vanished trust fund. My father-in-law's face drained of color. The whispers grew into a murmur of speculation. I didn't need to elaborate, not yet. The hint was enough, like lighting a spark near kindling. I turned the ring once more, then tucked it into my pocket instead of back on my finger. You've made it clear what I am to you, but you've overlooked one thing. I paused, letting the silence tighten. I know exactly who you are, and soon so will everyone else. I adjusted my jacket and walked toward the exit, leaving their panic thick in the air. Behind me, my sister-in-law's nervous laugh broke, my wife's fork clinked against her plate, and my mother-in-law whispered one word everyone heard. Not here. Chapter 4. The first fracture I was halfway to the doors, when the murmurs turned into outright chatter. Guests craned their necks, phones discreetly filming as if sensing a scandal. Trust fund, someone whispered. Missing money, another said wide-eyed. My wife leapt from her chair. He's lying, she snapped, her voice too high, too frantic. He's just bitter, ignore him. But her words couldn't stop the tide. A man in a dark suit, one of her father's business associates, leaned forward, face red with anger. "What's this about a missing trust fund? We've been questioning those discrepancies for months." My father-in-law tried to wave him off. "Nonsense, pure slander." I stopped at the doorway, turning slowly, letting them see my calm against their panic. "Slander," I said evenly. "Strange, because I still have the proof." Gasps spread like wildfire. Cameras clicked, polite smiles turned to suspicion, laughter to silence. My mother-in-law half stood, her hand shaking on the table. "Sit down," she hissed at my wife. But her eyes revealed fear, not control. I gave the crowd one last look. "Enjoy your party," I said quietly. "It's the last one you'll have before the truth comes out." I walked out, leaving the chaos behind. But I knew. Before the night ended, that chaos would grow, because once you hint at decay beneath a polished surface, people dig relentlessly. And I just handed them the tools. Chapter 5. The collapse begins by the time I reach the parking lot. The festive hum from inside had turned sharp and frantic. The celebration was gone, replaced by raised voices. I leaned against my car, listening as guests spilled outside, no longer smiling. They whispered, faces tense, phones pressed to ears. She said the fund was just delayed. Delayed. My investment was in that fund. Did you see his face when the son-in-law mentioned proof? My wife's uncle stormed past, muttering curses, while another guest shouted into his phone, "Call the office, freeze the accounts." Something's off. The ripples were becoming a tidal wave. Minutes later, my wife's brother, the one who'd mocked me at the table, burst out pale, his tie crooked. He froze when he saw me leaning against my car. "What have you done?" he demanded, voice breaking. I tilted my head. "I spoke the truth. People don't like being deceived, especially about their money." His fists clenched, but before he could speak, another guest pushed past, yelling back toward the hall, "Get the auditors." Now I slid into my car, lowered the window, and looked at him. "You laughed at me," I said softly. "Tonight I gave you a reason to weep, and this is only the start." As I drove off, the glow of the venue faded in my rearview mirror, but I knew it wasn't over for them. It was the start of their downfall because I hadn't yet released the evidence. When I did, their perfect world would crumble under the weight of their own deceit. Chapter 6. The truth unleashed 2 days later, my plan came together. I had everything ready. Scanned records, financial trails, and audio clips my wife's family had been too careless to conceal. Offshore deals, tax evasion, stolen investor funds, all neatly compiled in a digital file, undeniable. At 9 a.m., I hit send. The file went to every major news outlet, 3 oversight agencies, and a few journalists hungry for a scandal. Within an hour, headlines exploded online. Prominent family's business empire faces fraud probe. Exclusive, records reveal secret deals, hidden accounts. The response was instant. Clients canceled contracts. Shareholders called for urgent meetings. The company's stock crashed 32% in a day. By noon, their phones must have been overwhelmed. I pictured them pacing, watching their empire burn, but I wasn't finished. At 5 p.m., as the evening news aired, I released the video of their private talk, the one where they mocked me as an unfit father and planned to use my son as a pawn. The backlash was explosive. Investors weren't just angry, they were repulsed. Politicians who once courted them issued statements cutting ties. Even their closest allies began to vanish. Meanwhile, I was home, cooking dinner for my son, the TV murmuring in the background. He watched their faces on the screen, no longer as powerful hosts, but as suspects in a federal probe. He turned to me, eyes wide. "Dad, did you do this?" I smiled faintly and ruffled his hair. "No, son, they did this to themselves. I just showed the world." Chapter 7. Ruin and reckoning. The storm hit faster than I'd imagined. By midweek, subpoenas were everywhere. The FBI raided their offices, carting out laptops, files, and even their shiny Entrepreneur of the Year awards in boxes. A friend in law enforcement told me agents also searched their lavish home, seizing drives and ledgers. Neighbors filmed as the once untouchable family was led to black subs. The best part? Their own turned against them. My wife's brother, the one who'd sneered at me, cracked first. Facing years in prison, he took a plea and handed over more evidence. Her parents, desperate to save themselves, followed. My ex-wife wasn't spared. She was named in the conspiracy, caught on tape laughing about ruining me while discussing offshore funds. Suddenly, the family that called me worthless was pointing fingers at her. When the indictments dropped, their faces were everywhere. Wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, child endangerment. Their empire didn't just fall, it disintegrated. But the sweetest part wasn't the arrests. It was the aftermath. Her so-called friends stopped answering. The charities she led disowned her. Even her new husband's family erased her from their public image. Meanwhile, I walked my son to school, his hand in mine, the autumn air fresh. Other parents nodded with respect. I was no longer the outcast. That night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "Dad, she can't hurt us anymore, can she?" I brushed his hair back and smiled. "No, son, she's done." And I meant it. Chapter 8, The Last Wound *, the trial ended, sentences delivered. My ex-wife got 11 years behind bars. Most would have stopped there. I didn't because I knew her. When she got out, she'd try to rewrite the story, clawing her way back into society. I couldn't let her erase the truth. Months before her sentencing, I'd quietly collected her speeches, gala toasts, and articles where she boasted about being a perfect mother and philanthropist. With a journalist friend, we made a documentary, not a smear but a factual record. It opened with her grand speeches, then cut to the FBI raids. It showed her laughing at the wedding, then spliced in her plotting to use our son. The film aired online after her sentencing and went viral. She wasn't just a felon, she became a warning. Colleges studied her downfall. Parents cited her as a lesson in greed. And the best part, when parole hearings come, her name will be tied to that film. Her lies preserved, her smirk replayed, her betrayal inescapable. Years later, my son and I stood on our new home's balcony. He was older, stronger, prouder. "Dad," he said softly, "you didn't just win, you made sure she can't hurt anyone again." I smiled, the weight lifting. "No, son, we did. Some revenge ends in court, but the greatest revenge. It rewrites the legacy of those who wronged you, ensuring their story ends in disgrace." Epilogue, full circle years later, she tried to reach out. Her prison letters went unanswered, her calls ignored. But weeks before her release, she cornered me, or thought she did. I was leaving the courthouse after filing papers for my business when she appeared, gaunt but still defiant. "You destroyed me," she spat. "You turned everyone against me, you made me a villain." I looked at her calmly. "No," I said, "you did that yourself, I just held up the truth." She tried to laugh, but it was weak, broken. "Maybe our son will forgive me." At that moment, he walked up, taller now, confident. He glanced at her, then turned to me. "Dad, ready to go?" She opened her mouth, desperate. "Please." But my son cut her off, his words sharp. "You stopped being my mom when you abandoned me at Disney." Her face paled and she staggered back as if struck. We walked away, father and son, together. For the first time in years, I felt more than triumph, peace. True revenge isn't just about destroying those who betrayed you. It's about building a life so strong, so full, that they see they never had the power to break you. Was this justice fair, or should the storm have hit harder? Share your thoughts below. I read them all. Hit like if you hunger for justice and share this tale with someone who needs its spark. Follow Lauren's stories where betrayals don't rest, they hunt. Every shadow hides a reckoning. Every mask falls, and every betrayal meets its answer. Stay sharp, stay strong, stay tuned.